we're continuing. This is week 2 of our Next Steps 5 Growth Paths series. And these 5 growth paths, we believe that if we are all taking steps in these different areas, that we're all going to be growing in our spiritual walk, and we'll be growing closer together as a church and also closer to God. And so the 5 paths that we have as a church is humility, reflection, community, generosity, and telling. And today we're actually going to be talking about humility. So here's what I want you to do. I want you right now, you can close your eyes if you need, but I want you to think through all the people you actually know and who is one of the most humble people that you know. At least acquaintances, but you know this person. I want you to just picture them in your mind right now. And I want you to picture or remember an interaction you might have had with this person who is super humble, and just when you think of humility, you think of this person. Okay, now I want you to think of the most arrogant person that you know. Don't point them out. Okay? So think of the most arrogant person that you know, and now think through your interaction with that person. Okay, I am going to guess, and I would bet, more often than not, that as you were thinking of that interaction with the humble person, you're just kind of like, yeah. And as soon as you started thinking of that arrogant person, you're kind of like, right? If you had a choice, say we're getting on a bus and we were going to take a 10-hour bus ride, and there were only 2 seats left, one next to the humble person and one next to the arrogant person, I would guess none of you would pick the arrogant. You were like, oh, please, no, let me sit next to the humble person, right? So obviously, humility is something that is a bit of an attraction of other people. Humility, there's something about it that draws us to humble people. We appreciate humble people. When it comes to arrogant people, we endure arrogance. You know, I had in one of the apartments I lived at, Indiana Wesleyan, one of the most arrogant people I've ever known in my life was in our apartment. And he used to say, it's not being arrogant if you could back it up. I'm like, dude, you just doubled down on your arrogance. It's like, and he was always the best at this and the best at that, knew the most about this, knew the most about that. And yet, he couldn't seem to keep close friends for very long. But I'll tell you what, the humble people, oh my goodness. You can hang out with humble people all day long. So the problem is, humility isn't always easy or natural. And in our culture, humility isn't always celebrated as much. And this is just a thought I just came up with, so I'm putting that disclaimer out right now. But I would guess that a truly super humble person, you won't see a whole lot of social media communication and activity from a truly humble person. At least not like, hey, guess what I just did today? I did this and this. Oh, look how good I did this, and look how great I did this, right? Right? A humble person would probably have more of an attitude of, well, no, it's no big deal. It's not worth putting out there. So, athletes. Unfortunately, we see a lot of arrogant athletes. And, the trash talk. Interviews. Oh, my goodness. What are you taught about interviewing? Go, sell yourself. right? You know, you need to give them all the good points and all this. A lot of what we're pushed on is not humility. It's more of take care of yourself, talk about yourself, make sure other people know your value and your importance and things like that. So I want to take a look at humility and what the Bible has to say about it. But I will say the best example and best person for us to ever follow when it comes to humility would be Jesus. And in fact, in all of these 5 growth areas, it's kind of looking at Jesus and his model and trying to follow his example. And so in Philippians chapter 2, verses 6 through 8, talking about Jesus, it says, who being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used on his own for his own advantage. Now think about that for a second. It's really easy for us sometimes to remember Jesus as this person who walked the earth. And it still hurts my brain to think Jesus was 100% human and 100% God. Right? So in very nature, Jesus was God, but he didn't consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. There were many times in his life that Jesus could have used his godliness, his God powers, to his own advantage. To just say, you know what, I don't want to do this human stuff. I just, you know, he could have just said, look, instead of getting hungry, I'm going to hit my God button right now, and I'm just going to stop hunger. Instead of being sweaty and smelly, I don't want to do that anymore. You know, all these human things, think about, that he doesn't have to deal with as God, that he could have said, you know what, I'm going to be God through and through, and I'm not going to deal with these human things. You know what, I would not be surprised that Jesus had an upset stomach from time to time. Got a cold. His dad was a carpenter, so I'm sure as he was watching his dad or learning different trades that he had injuries. But he didn't say, you know what, I'm God, and I don't deserve this I don't deserve this pain. I don't deserve to have to go through all of this. But instead of using that for his advantage, rather, he made himself nothing by taking on the very nature of a servant. Think about that. He made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant. And you may be thinking, well, when was he actually a servant? When, you know, I know he was a rabbi and all this, but when did he actually take the nature of a servant? So let's go to the Last Supper. It's the Last Supper. It's supposed to be Passover. And there comes the time where Jesus takes off his outer clothes and grabs a basin and a towel, and he starts to wash the disciples' feet. Now, if you've been in church for a while, you've probably heard that story. And the longer you've been in church, I would imagine the true impact of that has kind of faded. Yeah, and Jesus washed the disciples' feet. Then Peter, of course, stuck his clean foot in his mouth when he's like, oh, you know, don't wash my feet. And, oh, well, if you're going to wash my feet, wash my whole body. And Jesus had to kind of correct them and all, right? And we just kind of move on. And we don't realize what Jesus actually did. Jesus said, look, I am at this moment, I'm no longer even a part of this group. I am taking on the posture of a servant. And not just any servant that would be in the house, but the one who had the job that was the least of the jobs, to clean people's feet. Because that was a regular thing. You walked around in the dry area with sandals and that kind of thing, and guess what? Your feet get dirty. They walked everywhere. They didn't get in a nice air-conditioned car. Right? And so you would wash your guests' feet. Jesus literally, as this verse says, took on the very nature of a servant. Okay, now remember, this is Jesus also fully God. That's humility. I mean, think about it. Jesus, if he wanted to, with his God powers, could have said, and your feet are clean, because I don't want to touch them. But no, he's washing the disciples' feet. And the kicker is he stooped down as a servant and washed Judas's feet. The one who shortly was going to go and betray him. That's humility. And it goes on. Being made in human likeness and being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. And we've talked about how death on the cross was not just death. It was meant to erase your existence from history. It was to be the most humiliating, painful way of execution that they could come up with. And the whole idea was, when you die from being crucified, you don't just die, you disappear. And Jesus, he didn't take advantage of his God powers and say, fine, I'll go ahead and I'll be crucified, but I'm going to make it so I don't feel pain. I'm going to make it so I don't feel agony. No, he stayed as human and as a servant and suffered for each and every one of us. So that is our target. That is what we aim for. That is what, when we talk about humility, that is what we're shooting for. Jesus has given this amazing example of what humility truly means. And you would think, especially for Christians, that we would at least be able to get this right, that on the scale and scheme of things, God is much higher than we are. But man, there's a lot of times we as humans, even Christ followers, tend to act as if we know better than God. We know that really God has one desire for our life, but we choose another. We know that God desires honesty from us, but in this situation, God, you don't understand. It's better if I lie. We know that God desires purity in our lives, but God, you don't understand. I just can't control myself. So, but this is okay. Whatever it might be, whenever we fight against God and his control and his will and his desire for our life, that's when we are saying, God, I think I'm a step above you in this area. So practically, what does it look like for us as people? Now, this is Jesus teaching about humility in Luke chapter 18, verses 9 through 14. And Jesus was talking to some who were confident of their own righteousness and looked down on everyone else. Jesus told this parable. Now, before you get that little voice in your head of, yeah, he's going to get those Pharisees and Sadducees. Here we go. I just would caution you to think, man, is Jesus actually going to be speaking to me? Are there times where I'm confident in my own righteousness? Are there times when I'm confident in my own goodness, in my own works, in my own abilities? Man, I am reading my Bible, I am praying, I'm doing all the right things, I am good. Are there times when you might be put in this situation where you are confident in your own righteousness and you forget it's only through Jesus that you're righteous at all and look down on everyone else? Jesus told this parable. 2 men went up to the temple to pray, one a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. The Pharisee stood by himself and prayed, God, I thank you that I am not like other people. Isn't that a great prayer? Like, God, I'm thankful that you made me me and I'm so good, right? I'm not like other people, robbers, evildoers, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I mean, there's just the epitome of humility right there. God, thank you for making me better than that guy right there. I fast twice a week, and I give a tenth of all I get. But the tax collector stood at a distance. He would not even look up to heaven, but beat his breast and said, God, have mercy on me, a sinner. I tell you that this man, rather than the other, went home justified before God. For all those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and all those who humble themselves will be exalted. Now, I'm not saying we have to put ourselves down to be humble. I'm not saying we have to be self-deprecating. No, that's not godly either. But having that attitude of that tax collector, of saying no matter how much good I do, no matter how much I help other people, no matter how much money I make, no matter how much money I donate, no matter what I do, God, have mercy on me. Because deep down, I'm a sinner. Because deep down, my actions put you on the cross. Because deep down, there's nothing I can do myself to clean myself up enough. And it's only through you. God, have mercy. When we have that attitude, when we can truly just boil it down to the last little bit and say, okay, this is who I am. I'm a sinner. Have mercy on me. And then God says, yeah, you are a sinner, but you're forgiven. And you're my child. If you choose to follow me, that's the path you can have. Now, the catch that we get into is we can rely so much on God's grace that we forget about talking about God's justice. We can't stomp on God's grace and say, oh, well, God's going to forgive me. That's not humble. You're right back with the Pharisee. Because you're saying, oh, well, at least I'm not like that guy. God, thank you for making me not like that guy. Thank you for making me not like Putin. Thank you for not making me like Hitler. Thank you for not making me like Hamas, who just invaded Israel. But you're the Pharisee who's standing there going, oh, I'm so glad you didn't make me like somebody else, rather than going, oh, God, have mercy. Because I fall so short of your holiness and perfection. And so day in and day out, God, I will appreciate and I will be so thankful for your love and your grace and your mercy. But that thankfulness will flow into not arrogance, but humility and grace towards others. It's real easy. It's real easy to step out of humility and into arrogance. Because when we think of arrogance, we think of the experts in the field of arrogance. rather than just arrogance also being, I deserve this. I deserve God's grace. I'm not that bad. So this is an area that I continue to work on in my life. I don't know about you. It's an area that I just like, I did it again. God, help me. And it's a horrible, horrible, scary prayer to pray. God, please humble me. Teach me humility. Because, man, that can be painful. But, oh my goodness, God, do I desire to just to have a fraction of your humility. Help me to truly continue to understand just who I am in your eyes. Loved, but yes, a sinner. Forgiven, but not perfect. And in desperate need of you. If you are relying on God today, fantastic. If you are relying on yourself for anything, and I'll just be honest, folks, an area that I struggle with in humility is finances. God, I trust you will take care of me. But then I need to make sure that my retirement fund's growing at the rate I want it to grow. And I need to make sure these bills are getting paid. I need to cut back on this and that. And I work, and I stress sometimes about finances. Like, oh my goodness, I've got 2 girls in college. Okay, if I can just get past the college years, right? And all this. Instead of truly going, okay, God, I know you want me to be smart with my finances. You don't want me to be stupid. You want me to be generous, but you want me to be a good steward. God, help me to be a good steward, and help me not to be a hoarder of the resources you give me, but a steward of the resources you give me. And help me remember, it's not my money. It's yours. So that's an area I struggle. And every now and then, boy, that arrogance perks up and goes, okay, God, I feel you tugging me to give here or there, but I need to make sure my future's taken care of financially. I don't know what area you might be struggling in, but I would just encourage us as a body to be encouraging each other, strengthening each other, and saying, look, let's all remember who we are. Let's all treat each other equally. Let's all, instead of saying, thank you for not making me like this person or that person, let's just say, God, thank you that we're all in this together and that you have grace and mercy. Oh, have mercy on all of us sinners. And let's remember, like in the movie Rudy, there's one God, and we're not him. Now, I do want to, there's always different wars and things going on in the world, unfortunately, and we don't pray for all of them. But the attack on Israel just kind of struck me for some reason. If you haven't heard, Israel is at war now. And so with that and the war in Ukraine that apparently the American media has forgotten about, there's a lot of tension in our world. And I just wanted to take some time and pray for that. The lives that have been lost even in the last 48 hours just keeps going up. People being taken hostage and that sort of thing. There's just some ugliness taking place. And so I didn't want to just go and gloss over it and not even talk about it. But so I just want, before the worship team comes up, I just want to spend some time in prayer. You can pray there at your seat. And even if there's an issue that is near to your heart during this time, let's go to God as a body. And you don't have to pray out loud. You can pray silently. If you want to pray out loud, go for it. God can hear all of our prayers at the same time. But I just want to spend some time praying for the conflicts that are going all over this world. So let's pray. God, right now, you know, you know every war that's taking place. You know every conflict. You know the wars between nations, the conflict between neighbors, the conflict between spouses. God, right now, there just seems to be so much struggle, aggressiveness, hostility. God, the war between political parties. God, I just pray for your peace. God, for revival. Oh God, I just pray that you would strengthen us as Christians to be able to speak truth in love. God, to be peacemakers. God, help us to not just pour gasoline on the flames of these conflicts. God, help us not to be so arrogant that, God, we think we know how to solve all these problems, but God, help us to truly turn to you. And so, God, right now, I pray for those who are victims of a conflict that's a war or a conflict between neighbors, a conflict between families. God, just pray for your comfort and your peace. God, make yourself known throughout the nations. And God, allow your spirit of conviction to just pour over all of us, that you would draw us back to you, that we would, God, truly be your children and your people and follow you in humility, in love, and grace. In your name we pray. Amen.